Beautiful humans, welcome to our sixth episode of the Embodied Podcast. Today we're here with Niraj Naik. Um, super beautiful because we're gonna tap deep into breath work and what our body can do with something that we do so unconscious, basically every moment of our lives, but how we can change our physiology by just becoming more aware how we breathe and then using it in different moments of our lives with different intention. So Niraj is also a licensed pharmacist turned breathwork instructor and now leading this global Soma movement. And Niraj, first off, welcome to the show. And I'm super curious to hear more on that interesting transition from working with drugs to tapping into, man, you have the pharmacy inside you. So open the doors and use it.
I like that. Yeah, so I was actually a pharmacist years ago for about 7 years, and that's where I really got to know what it's like to work in the healthcare industry, and it just seemed like it was missing something really important, and that is actually getting people well. The industry seems to the community pharmacy seems to basically maintain people's illness rather than actually cure them. And I just lost a lot of my job satisfaction. Like you spend so much time working, studying to do this job, but you're not really doing the service that you expect. And I mean, any pharmacist who thinks that they are doing that, yeah, go ahead. But most pharmacists I speak to, they all have the same feelings as well, like quite a lot of regret, and they're just doing it as because it's the only way they can survive. It's like security now. So there's a lot more people now leaving these conventional health systems and joining. Believe it or not, in the UK, more doctors are leaving the profession than joining. So that shows you there's something wrong with the whole system. So I had a bit of a breakdown, and I got taken actually to funny enough, to a Tony Robbins event, and it was at this Tony Robbins event where uh, I first got a real big insight into the use of food, um, even things like breathing, meditation, lifestyle change basically for preventing disease and even healing from disease. So I was like, right, well, if this stuff is true, because I'm not taught any of this in pharmacy, I have a whole pharmacy full of sick patients. I can put Tony Robbins to the test, see if he's full of shit. And so that's what I did. And actually, the funny thing is that you only get like 2 or 3 minutes to spend with a patient because it's just like a factory of people coming in and out. So I came up with a system of giving healthy shopping lists to patients based on what the conditions were. But to be honest, it was the same formula. It's like just change whatever they're eating now, which is majority processed foods, for real foods. So literally, I'm just sending them recipes and ingredients to create their own food, their own diets. And those who took on my advice, because you'd be surprised how few people know how to cook for themselves. It's incredible. Most people are so conditioned to just use the microwave and put in a box right into the microwave. So those who actually decided to learn how to cook and make their own food and do things for themselves took action, and within a few weeks I was getting these incredible results. Like, just I call it the no factory diet. So just don't eat anything made in a factory, and you'll be surprised how you can transform someone's health just from that. So that actually got me a bit of a reputation, and I ended up getting promoted to the head office of a big corporation in the UK that's a pharmacy and grocery all in one. I was going to come up with this really novel project, could have helped a lot of people, this healthy shopping list service. Boom, 6 months into it, it got shelved. Not sure the full ins and outs of it. I can make my own theories about why it happened. But then that's when I got boom hit with a autoimmune disease. I was like so depressed. I was so disillusioned. It was such a struggle and fight just to get recognized for what I was doing and get promoted in the first place. And I had this big fear of going back to pharmacy and doing that shitty day job. And I also just lost my faith in humanity and connection with God, spirit, which has somewhat been tested as well in the last couple of years. But yeah, and that's when I got really sick myself and ended up becoming a patient. And to be honest, I was ready to just give it all in. I didn't care. I was like, take me if you want. I'm done with this planet. And I got really sick. Like literally, I was going to toilet like 40 times a day. I was shitting blood. You lose like a third of your body weight. The consultant, who was this huge obese lady, shoving a camera up my bum, just tell me that I've got ulcerative colitis. She did not represent health whatsoever, and she was giving me health advice saying food has no impact, diet, lifestyle has no impact, stress makes no impact on your disease. Basically, shut up, take the pills, or have your colon removed. These were the options I was given. And I was just, obviously I was lost. I was like, well, I'm going to have my colon removed. I was only 30 years old. And then basically wearing a nappy, it was just super embarrassing. So thank God I didn't listen to her. And something came inside, I knew that there had to be another way. And one of the things with Tony Robbins is like what he says is model success. So find people who are successful at doing what it is you want to do and learn from them. Don't get advice from somebody who is unhealthy themselves if you want to get healthy, right? So I started to do that, and I started to look for other, case studies of people who had healed themselves from this. And remarkably, there was quite a lot of people actually out there. And also because we were told that you can't cure it. So I was amazed that there's so many people who had healed from it. And then the other thing was, like they say, God stands for gift of desperation. I literally had this real moment of desperation, and a dear friend of our family, Swami Ambikananda, came to the rescue, and she basically said, look, you've got an amazing opportunity, a gift, because if you can heal yourself from this, you can put your passion for science and all this behind it, you'll be able to inspire a lot of people to get into these things. So that's exactly what happened. So she taught me the foundations of pranayama, Ayurveda, yoga, meditation. And through that, I just went down a huge rabbit hole, learning as much as I could about these things. Went really deep because I got some benefits just from the simple breathing exercises of pranayama. Similar techniques to what you have in the Wim Hof method, slightly different ones for switching off the stress, getting into altered states of consciousness. I also discovered a book called Power of the Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph Murphy. He was a pharmacist actually, and it was written many years ago, but he was the pharmacist, but he was also an Ayurvedic doctor, but also into Christianity and Christian science. And he will blend the two well together, the West and Eastern philosophies, and devise a system of scientific prayers where you use mantra and affirmation in certain states of mind to reprogram the subconscious mind, which is where all of our problems tend to be, because the subconscious mind deals with the autonomic nervous system. So, those things that we take for granted, like the immune system, if you just allow the reptilian brain, which controls these things on autopilot, to have full control, and you don't take conscious control, then what happens is under stress and fear and all these emotions where we're feeling a threat in our environment, which so many people feel these days because we live in quite a competitive, hostile environment, where there's so much fear just pushed at us from all sorts of areas, either media, government, politicians, all the time, non-stop. The reptilian brain will make you breathe and make your immune system act and your digestion, all these things, as though you're going into battle, you're fighting. The problem with that is when it goes on for a chronic length of time, it drains your energy, and it also means you hyperventilate, you breathe too fast, you mess up your breath, your physiology with the breath, you get all these hyperventilation issues, and you also then have an immune system that gets confused, and that immune system can start attacking healthy cells in the body. And that's exactly what happens. And according to the Ayurvedic system, uh, when you have chronic disease like an autoimmune, it's basically a spiritual disturbance. It's a disturbance in the spirit, the energy of the body, right? And what does pranayama mean? It means energy control. So, and what does spiritual actually means? It means to breathe, right? It comes from the Latin root word espiritu, breath. So, you know, they knew, these ancient mystics, the link between breath, your life force, your spirit, and disease. And so, you know, when you're under a spiritual disturbance, something has happened that's messing up your energy balance in the body. And when that goes off balance, that's when disease kicks in. And it will attack the area which is the weakest in your body. So for me, with my Ayurvedic constitution, my nature means that I am more prone to colon issues and fire issues like acid problems. So I'm a pitta vata energy, so it affects the colon, and you get these colitis issues. So that's exactly what happened. It was like literally like a prescription you read, and I was like, whoa, okay, now I figured who I am a bit more. And that's the thing with Ayurveda and these ancient practices. It's all about know thyself. It's the understanding that there's no one size fits all. Problem with conventional medicine is that it tries to treat everybody the same as an average. And the problem with that is that humans aren't rational. We're not linear creatures, right? And reductionist science, which is what conventional medicine uses as their like justification for their practices, basically puts everybody on this reductionist linear model, which is not true when it comes to humans. Okay, it might work for like cars and things like that, getting from A to B, or you know, taking a plane up into the sky. But when it comes to human beings, we're all over the place. We have so many different holistic systems working in harmony, in unison, that it's impossible to just change one factor in your body and expect to fix and solve a problem. And you know, I'll give you a good example. So one of the biggest epidemics we have is heart disease, and the prevention of heart disease, they use blood pressure medication because they say that high blood pressure causes heart disease. Right now, here's the thing: the problem with this is if you take everybody's blood pressure in a population, you'll find that there's actually a bell-shaped curve like this. So you'll get more people around a center around 120/80, but you'll get 25% on either side which have low or high blood pressure. Okay, and the problem is you go in to see a doctor, right? And what they're going to do is they're going to try and correct you to have an average blood pressure of 120/80. When you do that, the problem with that is that some people have high blood pressure, and that's good for them. That's their normal. Some people have low blood pressure, and that's their normal. As soon as you start correcting it, it messes up all the other systems in the body because you're moving them from their normal to the population's average, which is not correct for that person. So I tell you a lot, like Gandhi. Do you know what Gandhi's blood pressure was? Like most of his life. Well, like, have a guess.
Would say on the lower end somehow.
No. So actually, that's what you
Higher.
think. It was 200/100 most of his life. And you'd think with that blood pressure, you'd have a diseased body. When they did the post-mortem, he had no problems with his health whatsoever. His organs were intact, very functional, because he got killed, got shot, in the head. So he died when he was 80 odd years old, and he was fine physically, right? So there's a myth of all this stuff about high cholesterol and average blood pressure and average cholesterol and all of this stuff. It's all a myth because drug companies make insane amounts of money through health checkups. You go for a health checkup, and the problem is that, as I said, there's a bell-shaped curve. 25% of people on either side are going to be a false positive. So they're just manufacturing all these false positives and then giving medications, meaning there's more cases now for a doctor to prescribe a substance. And the problem with that is, and you'll see this very, very much with cholesterol, when you give statins and you try and compete to bring person's cholesterol down to an average, when actually you need cholesterol in the body. Like your brain is 60% fat, right? And you need cholesterol. Your cell membrane, which is the brain of the cell, is cholesterol. So you take away somebody's normal average, their average normal cholesterol, and you try and make it the universal average, you cause all these side effects. Their muscles waste away, they get all these pains, their brain degenerates, and they get other diseases. So this averaging and making everybody the same, which you can see is they're trying to do on a big scale now, right, is the biggest mistake, medical mistake. And there's no surprise that medical errors are the top 3 cause of death in the world, right? If you can look this all up. So I realized the hard way that we need healthcare which is customizable, and we need it to find out what each person needs, not what the entire population needs. We need to go on an individual level. So when I healed myself eventually within a few months, I made a pact. I was like, I'm going to put as much evidence behind all the techniques I've used, but I'm also not going to make a blanket treatment for people. I'm going to focus on creating a customized healthcare system for people. And that's eventually what has led now to what we created with Soma Breath, which is a whole library of traditional yogic practices, meditation techniques, but modern stuff as well, like brainwave entrainment, music technology, but then going back to the traditional yoga, the way they would do yoga, and then the Ayurvedic system on figuring out who you are, know thyself, self-inquiry to really figure out what's right for you. And then we train our instructors to be able to, help people on an individual level. And this is what we need more than ever, Yeah.
Wow, what a beautiful
Okay.
story. Thank you. Thank you for taking us through all of that. That's amazing. And I'm happy
Yeah.
you healed. This is beautiful. And, I have a couple of very powerful experience with Soma Breath as well. And I wanted to, for me, like at one point when you were developing this, you not only healed yourself, but at one point you probably came to almost superpowers in your body or in your mind that you didn't know were existing, like like when you healed yourself, then like, and you keep on doing it, like sometimes it gets almost psychedelic or it gets very connected, or and I'm also curious, like how did that continue? Like when did you have that moment of, oh my God, I have something really awesome in my hands that not only heals but actually makes you a superhuman almost?
I think so. To be honest, like I kind of was a little bit in disbelief that the breath could be so powerful, right? Even though that was definitely very noticeable for me, was the stuff that really helped. And then when I started to do this, my first ever stuff that I actually launched was this music therapy technology called tripneural, where I would actually, on some tracks, I would put this extended exhalation breathing technique to it. So you breathe in a rhythm where you extend your exhalation, and then you do some breath holds and stuff at the end. It was similar to Wim Hof, but different, right? But when I met Wim and I saw all of his stuff, that's what really inspired me to get back into the breath, because I was like, wow, this is living proof. So he was definitely a big inspiration, and I just looked up to him and what he had achieved, and he took, like, he obviously got inspired from traditional techniques, and he made them very accessible to everybody. So, and then you could see living proof as well of what this stuff can do. But then what happened was I met prior to that, I'd been doing like a research on these ancient pranayama practices. So one of the techniques is kumbhaka, breath retention. And when you hold your breath beyond a certain point, you get all this amazing strengthening of the whole physiology. And there was a doctor called Prakash Malsh who lived in the Himalayas, and he has a clinic, but he also treats with Ayurveda and yoga in his practice with pranayama techniques. And he had written a paper on Nishesha Rachaka, which you can look up, on intermittent hypoxia and the benefits of that through just breathing practices. So I always wanted to meet him and learn from him. So I actually was fortunate to be invited to train with him, and I went really deep on these traditional yogic practices. And then I learned that the entire system of yoga, actually, if you look at it, because I also then really got into Buteyko, and Buteyko is also traditional yoga basically, but revamped, for this day and age. But Prakash Malsh he really started to explain the medical understanding of yoga, and that the whole system of yoga seems to be about helping you do a couple of very important things. That is, to be able to extend your breath hold time, right? And to slow your breathing rate down. Now, the reason for that is that also is supported by Lao Tzu, Chinese philosopher, who said that the perfect human breathes like he's not breathing at all. And what a perfect human, in my experience, is not necessarily superhuman, because, if you get superpowers, if you're an arsehole to start with, you're just going to become a super arsehole, right? The more superpowers you develop. So, no, the idea is to actually become a good human, right? Somebody who can connect with people, who can fit into society, integrate, inspire people, and connect and collaborate, and is a force of good in the world, right? So a good role model. And you see the way people breathe who tend to be really balanced and in control of themselves, okay? Because people go the other side, usually out of irrationality, out of fear, out of envy, jealousy, hatred, like negative emotions turns people into, people that they're not really, it just makes their irrational side come out. They tend to breathe faster, more erratically, and they tend to, not be able to sit still, all right? And if you look at somebody who's really calm, like a monk, a Tibetan Lama, or someone who's just really at peace, equanimity with the world, they're very, very slow breathing rates, and they can hold their breath. It's like they're just in a stillness. They're in a state of stillness. Now, if you look at somebody, if you study someone physiologically who's in that state, what's going on is that they have mastered their ability to hold their breath. And in order to be able to do that, or to still their breath so much, is you've got to have very high carbon dioxide tolerance, and you've got to also have very efficient use of oxygen in the body. Now, why do we want to have that? How does that benefit us? So if you look at traditional pranayama, which was actually developed by studying animals in nature, animals that live a long time, elephants and turtles, they have very, very slow breathing rates, like 1 to 2 breaths per minute, right? Animals that don't live a long time, like rats and mice, they have very, very fast breathing patterns, 150 to 300 breaths per minute. And they only live like 1 or 2 years, right? But there's a weird anomaly to this rule. The naked mole rats, they live up to 30 years free of disease pretty much, right? They kind of cheated death to a certain degree. And what's the difference? They live primarily underground in a hypoxic environment, very low oxygen environment. And they can hold their breath 18 minutes plus at a time. So there's a correlation there between longevity, disease, and breath hold time and breath rates, right? They breathe very slow. Same thing with whales. Whales can live 200 years plus. Their breathing rate is less than 1 breath per minute, and they can hold their breath for 2 hours at a time, right? So there's a correlation between breathing rates and breath hold time and longevity. And Buteyko also says that, your state of health can be measured by your controlled pause, which is your breath hold time that you measure first thing in the morning. And that's a measurement of your state of health. The healthier you are, like if you can hold your breath 40 seconds plus, just from a normal inhale, exhale, hold your breath, you can measure in the morning, 40 seconds plus, and you're in really good health. It means you've got good body tissue oxygenation, okay? So if you want to become really superhuman, right, and really like one of these like monk-like people, you need good body tissue oxygenation. You need to get the oxygen from red blood cells to the tissue cells, okay, of your body. So that requires the right level of carbon dioxide through the Bohr effect to get oxygen off your red blood cells into your tissue cells. And then you want to have efficient mitochondria. Now, certain states, physiological states, where you, when you hold your breath beyond a certain point, that will force your mitochondria to adapt to a low oxygen environment. When you lower the oxygen in your blood for a short time, it kind of exercises the mitochondria, and you also create more mitochondria. So you might have 1,000 plus, but it might double or triple the amount of mitochondria. This starts to make you more efficient using oxygen. Okay, you need less oxygen to make the same amount of energy. Okay, and the more efficient you're using oxygen, the less wear and tear you get. Okay, through your energy, through your combustion engine, which is your mitochondria, as you're going through life. Now, if you look at a car analogy, like cars that are like the old models of cars that aren't very efficient using oxygen, they basically splutter, right? And spit and splutter gas. They kind of guzzle gas as well. And then they suffer from a lot of wear and tear and break down often. And you need to see the mechanic a lot. But a really finely tuned, super efficient car, right? Like these modern engines and Mercedes-Benz and stuff. They just run and run and run forever, and you hardly have to fill them up. So these are the types of engines we want to create. And the way you do that is by training yourself, okay, to become super efficient using oxygen. And there's various ways of doing that. The side effects of all this, and why I think is a really good practice and a measurable practice to develop, is because the side effects of all of these things, because you can measure every day, you can measure your breath hold time. Is it improving? Every day you can measure your breathing rates, your natural breathing rate at rest. These are measurable goals. But what you'll find the side effects of it is that you become calmer, you become more relaxed, you think more clearly, you have more clarity, and your thoughts are less erratic, right? Because carbon dioxide, when you can handle more carbon dioxide in the body, calms down the erraticness of your thoughts and makes your thoughts more clear, right? Oxygen is an exciter. Oxygen itself causes more thoughts, and if it's not in control, you get erratic thoughts. And this leads to then erratic behavior, irrational behavior. And oxygen itself is contracting, it contracts, right? Carbon dioxide dilates, and it works with another important gas, nitric oxide, which is antiviral, antibacterial, antimicrobial. And it helps to stay healthy. It evades like germs and microbes, and it also dilates blood vessels in your lungs as well, so you get better blood flow and oxygenation. And nitric oxide is used to get the oxygen into your cells as well. So by just solving these problems, what happens is you become more focused, you become calmer, you sleep better, your moods improve, you just become a nicer person to hang out with. And through that, you're going to attract more cool things into your life, right? So what we try and teach with Soma Breath is like how to use these two metrics, breath hold time, breathing rates, right? As a measurable goal to then improve yourself in many different aspects of your life, especially your fitness and stamina and health. And there's various different ways of doing that. And along the whole step of that process, you can also use various techniques to figure out who you truly are. Because things like your diet, your exercise, the people you hang out with, your vibe, your profession that you're doing, whether you love it or you hate it, your enthusiasm for life, all has a net effect on how you breathe. And the more at peace you are with life, the slower your breathing rates, the lower your breathing rates. Now, there's one scientist called Helmut Sees, who's the father of redox chemistry. He studied oxygen and the role of oxygen in the body. And he showed that although it's really difficult to live without oxygen, it's really difficult to live with oxygen because of oxidative stress. It's why you need antioxidants in a diet. So this is why when you become very adapted to oxygen, so you need less oxygen, the least amount of oxygen possible to survive, it has this amazing effect of enhancing your life in so many different ways. All right. So with our mantra really is actually learn to breathe less to live longer, which kind of contradicts the whole breathe more, MF saying, but he means the same thing. Essentially, it's the same thing, but actually the net effects of all these techniques, if you go back to traditional yoga, is you're going to end up breathing less over time, and that corresponds to better health. Yeah.
Wow, super amazing. Particularly like all the science parts that you brought out there. Super, super interesting. The correlation or between like oxygen and carbon dioxide, and one contracting, the other one dilating. Two things I wanted to pick up on, because basically you said there's these two practices that you recommend doing basically every day, count or measuring kind of the breathing rate, and then measuring your breath hold time.
Yes.
So do you just do it once in the morning basically, and then what sort of like state do you do it when you just like just sit down and so you have like same thing? And also with the breath hold, do you do a breathing pattern before, or do you just basically see how long you can hold it?
It's all going to be a rest. So what all spiritual practices do, the spiritual practices are basically practices that actually affect your breath and energy, all right? Spiritual practices. You'll see, if you actually now look at spiritual practices with that point of view, the spiritual breath are designed to work with the breath, and actually the net effect of them is to improve these two scores, right? It makes so much more sense. And the idea of a spiritual practice is to improve your default state. So this is a state when you're not doing any techniques. That's why you must measure these values, these metrics, at your default state, which is when you're not doing any techniques. So the first thing in the morning, within the first 10 minutes of waking up, you measure your breath hold time. Okay? The breath hold time is really simple. You just breathe in through your nose, out through your nose. Normal, not like, nothing like that. Just hold your nose. So normal exhale, hold your nose, and count how long it takes before you get your first urge to breathe. Then when you inhale after that, your inhale shouldn't be like where you're gasping for air. That means you've gone too long, you've gone too far with your breath hold time. You might have gone 15% longer than you actually are. So it's when you get the first signs of stress in the body, that's when you inhale again, you count that time. So most people's average, most people are going to be around 20 to 30 seconds who are healthy, but we don't want to be average, right? We want to be above average. Okay, so with practice, when you bring in all of our Soma breath techniques, you can even do this with a Wim Hof method. The Wim Hof method will also help you with this, or Buteyko method. They'll all do the same thing. What will happen is over time you'll find from 20 seconds it will go to 30 and then 40 plus, right? And when you start going 40 plus, you start getting to that superhuman level, the more super yogi level, okay? And you'll really feel noticeable effects of your physiology. Everything becomes calmer, clearer, and happier, right? And then your breath rate is something you'd measure. Oh yeah, again about the breath hold time. When you're less than 20 seconds, that's when you're unhealthy. And anything below 15 seconds, all right, is when you're really you need to really look into your health. And some people who are very, very sick, serious cardiovascular issues, they can't hold more than 5 seconds. But also it could be that they are somebody who's very panicky. So people less than 20 seconds, it could simply be they don't have good carbon dioxide tolerance, or they have a lot of fear. And by doing these techniques, you start to overcome the fear response, panic starts to calm down, and you suffer less from anxiety, which is really, really good. Okay, so more training of this will actually improve if you're somebody who suffers from panic and anxiety, it will actually help relieve those things. Which then, a lot of people do things that they'll regret later, purely because they're an anxious person, they're a panicky kind of person. And they'll do things driven by fear and make bad decisions driven by fear. But when you start to calm the physiology down with carbon dioxide and training yourself to have better oxygen efficiency, actually these emotions go away. The fear goes away, anxiety goes away, and you start to make decisions with more clarity, which is great. So this improves then your relationships with people, just your interaction in life just improves. Then the breath rate is something you'd measure. You can get a breath rate counter, like it's called Meditimer on an app. You can get an app. You just measure your breathing rate. So how many breaths you take per minute at rest. So you can also do that in the morning when you're chilling. Just measure what that is. Now, they say average is 15 breaths per minute, 15 breaths to 20 breaths per minute, which is actually really high. Okay. Swami Sivananda says that if you want to live less than 70 years, breathe more than 15 breaths per minute. If you want to live above 70 years, right, breathe less than 15 breaths per minute, right? So, sorry, more than 15 is when you want to live less than 70. If you want to live more than 70 years, 70 to 80, breathe within 10 to 15 breaths per minute. If you want to live over 80 years to your full potential, bring your breathing rate down below 10 breaths per minute. Okay, now there's a lot of studies that have been done, okay, that shows that the optimum breathing rates for positive energy, absorption of energy, mood, just a feeling of deep relaxation and rejuvenation happens below 10 breaths per minute. All right, there's a study you can look up, which is called, what's it called? Let me just show you. It's How Breath Control Can Change Your Life. All right, it's a systematic review, okay, of different psychophysiological correlations of slow breathing. So they basically looked at all the studies revolving around slow breathing techniques and showed how they correlate to health outcomes. Okay, and it's amazing the wealth of different studies that already exist, that when you bring your breathing rate below 10 breaths per minute, how it improves your life in so many different ways and your health. And Buteyko was all about this as well. Slow, but not deep. He was not about deep. Problem with deep breathing, okay, is you end up bringing in large volumes of air in and out. And you breathe out lots of carbon dioxide. You breathe in lots of oxygen. That's not very good, actually. It's counterintuitive. In fact, you only do these deep breathing techniques as part of techniques. That shouldn't be your day-to-day breathing, because then what happens? You hyperventilate. So Buteyko was all about actually diaphragmic breathing, but shallow diaphragmic breathing. Shallow chest breathing leads to stress, but shallow diaphragmic breathing calms you down and you stimulate the parasympathetic receptors and you get really good absorption. But deep, heavy breathing, if you just do 30 seconds of deep, heavy breathing, you'll feel frazzled and panicky at the end of it, right? So deep, heavy breathing should always be followed with kumbhaka, breath holds. We hold your breath for as long as you can. That brings your physiology back into balance, right? Otherwise, what happens, deep, heavy breathing is you mess up this ratio of oxygen, carbon dioxide. And that shouldn't be what you do during the day. Now, the problem with breathwork these days is that people aren't telling you the difference between breathwork techniques and normal breathing. Okay? There's a few people who really talk about it, like, you know, the Buteyko guys. They make more importance on this. We really talk about it in Soma Breath, about the distinction between a breathing technique and normal breathing. Because you'll see, I've done so many classes and workshops over the years. You know, I've even gone on tour with Wim Hof, you know, and done events with him. And you'll see that people get confused. They think fast rhythmic hyperventilation is normal breathing. You'll see people hyperventilating on their own, you know, sometimes, you know, like for no reason, thinking that they're getting like supercharged or something. But actually, no, it's not good. It's not healthy. But when you use it as part of a technique, it can become healthy. So when you do fast rhythmic breathing and then you hold your breath, that difference between like high oxygen and low oxygen, right, has been shown in various studies, like clinics who do this using machines. There's this technique called intermittent hypoxic training, where they use machines where you give you very high oxygen followed by low oxygen. And this simulates like high altitude training. And they found that this produces more stem cells, it improves your mitochondrial function, oxygen efficiency, and various different metrics. And basically when you're doing like something, a technique like Wim Hof method, or what we do with Soma Breath, these like long, you know, breathing, like fast breathing, basically followed by slow breathing. It's one of our techniques is that Wim Hof, that's a Wim Hof method as well. You basically are mimicking that, what they're doing in these labs, which has all these profound benefits. And that explains all these benefits of intermittent hypoxia that you're seeing in clinics and labs and with these techniques all over the world. So that's the time when you do hyperventilation as part of a technique. The only other times you might hyperventilate, breathe faster than normal, is when you exercise and you're doing a lot of exercise. And also when you sleep, you actually breathe fast for several minutes, then you hold your breath. You do sleep apnea. And we all have a period of apnea in the body, so during our sleep, it goes on for, you know, quite a while, significant amount of time. But sleep apnea becomes a problem when it becomes a chronic thing, where you're having many episodes of apnea, of low oxygen. That's when it becomes a problem. But actually your brain at night is doing like fast rhythmic breathing followed by holding your breath throughout the night, especially during the deep REM sleep. So when we mimic it during the day, we can get all these benefits of what's going on at night, which is, so also with when you breathe in a deep way like this, you move the cerebral spinal fluid and it clears the brain of a lot of gunk, right, and junk that builds up throughout the day. It's like a cleansing. So even if you just breathe deeply for like say 10 seconds, you can actually have a bit of a cleansing. It might make you feel a little bit more clear, right? Because you're moving the biggest lymphatic system in the body, right? The cerebral spinal fluid. But when you do it chronically, when it's like maybe you do it for like 2 or 3 minutes, if you don't follow up with a breath hold, you can actually make yourself feel quite panicky and kind of stress, okay? And in fact, Buteyko would do something called a forced hyperventilation test in his lab, in his hospital, with patients to find out which disease, where the disease is affecting their body. So he would make people force hyperventilate. And then after doing tests, you could see, because that would actually trigger disease, which organs are the weakest. So then he would know what disease it is a way to diagnose which organs are failing in the body. A forced hyperventilation test, you know? So these are sort of the bit of wisdom we're trying to teach in Soma Breath, is like to know when you should hyperventilate, when you shouldn't, when you should use it as part of a technique, when it can be beneficial, when it causes harm, right? But the essence of everything, like that's one technique. The essence of what we teach is reduced breathing, but training your brain and your physiology to be rhythmic breathing, So we developed this technology called Soma Breath Entrainment, which is a series of breathing tracks of different rhythms and patterns that create different effects, which the net effect of it is that it trains you to have slow rhythmic breathing as your default state. Because that, in my opinion, is the key to longevity and health, is where your natural breathing patterns are slow and harmonic and rhythmic, where you're breathing in a perfect rhythm and groove, right? Now, HeartMath did a lot of studies on rhythmic breathing. They showed also coherence, and that positive emotions, like happy emotions, actually naturally creates rhythmic breathing. But also, when you just practice rhythmic breathing, you can elicit happy emotions and happy hormones. But when somebody's sad and depressed, the breathing pattern becomes erratic, right? And your rhythm, your breath is not rhythmical anymore. So we're all about training people to have smooth, rhythmic, coherent breathing patterns. And then we have these advanced techniques with breath retention and things like that, and yoga asanas and techniques that enhances then your mitochondrial function and oxygen efficiency. But really, at the essence of what we're trying to teach is to breathe in a slow, harmonic rhythm. That's why what we do is complementary to a lot of the other stuff out there, in my opinion. Yeah.
Wow, that was amazing, Niraj. I love how much things you touched there, and one thing that I also what Soma does amazingly well, in my opinion, is the music, the immersive music that helps you so much into that breathing.
And that's where the music comes in, because I had a bit of an aha moment, which was like, okay, so when you do pranayama normally, you count certain rhythms, okay, certain patterns. Like you might breathe in for 2 seconds, out for 4, hold for 8, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Now, the problem with counting in your head is that when you breathe in and out, every time you count, your breath stutters a bit. So you might go unconsciously. You don't even realize you're doing it. So it stops being a smooth breath. Problem with that is that every stutter, that jerkiness, affects the pumping of the heart, because your breath and your heart is so intimately linked. Every time you breathe in, heart rate goes up a bit. When you breathe out, heart rate goes down a bit, right? But when you breathe jerkily, the heart rate becomes jerky, and you get a jerky flow of blood around your body, right? So counting in your head whilst doing pranayama is not the best idea, okay? So, but you want to be smooth with your breath. In general, you want to be smooth. So what we did was put it into the music. So the music has a beat to it. We do music that is 60 beats per minute or 120 beats per minute. And the breath is timed to the beat. That way your breath is completely smooth and you don't have to worry about counting. It's in the music. And that then means you can train smooth breathing patterns. And that helps you in so many different ways.
Definitely. So, Niraj, our next question we ask every interview, and it's always an hypothetical question. And I'm really curious what you're gonna, if we place ourselves into 10, 20 years into the future, where literally everything is measurable. So we already touched about a lot of medical things that are measurable, but literally everything we can think of, even connection to the spirit and like how much our flow state is measurable. And you can put it on your smartwatch or in your corner of your eye of your smart glasses or whatever technology we have back then. What would be the best metric for you to be displayed in that future sense? So you can choose everything in this question.
Like I'm a big believer in this idea of good karma. Like the more you do for others, karma yoga basically, the more it comes back in mysterious ways. So if you can measure impact in some way, right? Like how many people are you really touching genuinely with whatever it is you put out there? Like I really believe like there's different levels. Like you can help a few people around you, like your family, and you get a certain amount of good karma back, right? But when you build systems, and this is why we shouldn't all knock capitalism and corporations, because those that are doing good work out there, what they're doing is they're building systems to deliver solutions that solve world's problems and make people happier. And if you can build systems that scale impact, positive impact, and one of the best means of positive impact that has the least harm to the environment and things like that is the selling or the distribution of content, light, information, solutions through the digital world. Basically light, right? It's light energy. And this is the beauty of the internet, is that we can actually scale good ideas to a huge, massive population. So if you can measure impact somehow, there are ways to do it, obviously. Like you can measure it through your income, like are you making money? That's one way. Like people aren't going to buy your stuff if you are selling crap that doesn't help anyone. But another way to do it is like people buy stuff, but they don't necessarily always use it. So what I'd love to be able to measure is like how many people are like really using our stuff every day and then getting intrinsic value that then makes other people around them have better lives. If you can measure that good karma score of like doing this, that would be incredible. That'd be amazing. Because if people can compete on that level rather than how much money they just made, I think we'd have way more healthy companies, corporations, you know.
Yeah, it's really beautiful what you say there with like the systems and
Yeah.
the beautiful distinction around, it's not all bad like capitalism. It's ultimately like what's the place we're doing it from. And I feel linking to what you said earlier, maybe if people just would breathe in more smooth patterns, like these systems would be actually built with a different intentionality and then ultimately deliver different results. So I think
It's
like
incredible,
who we are is basically baked into the systems that we're basically building around us.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen people who are really, really like angry people just completely calm down and become like, just beautiful souls. Just when they train their breath to be more rhythmic and they slow their breathing down and have better carbon dioxide tolerance. Within a few sessions, you can make a really fearful, angry person into an angel. It's amazing. And it's nothing about, using some NLP hypnosis technique to brainwash them into, it's just literally working with their breath, so yeah.
So for people that want to like try this out, like where can they find some sort of like entry points into the breathwork techniques that you're teaching?
Yeah, sure. So we have a YouTube channel. So most of what we have is already for free on YouTube. It's a great way to distribute stuff. So we have a lot of great sessions on there. Like we don't do the long, intense sessions on YouTube because of safety reasons. We let our instructors do that. So you could actually hire an instructor from our somabreath.com website. You could also go to YouTube, try out some free stuff to test it out. But you can also do our courses. So we have a 21-day course. We have the BreathFit course. I recommend doing BreathFit first in the 21 days. And these are transformative courses, like totally change your life type stuff. So, you have to be prepared that your life will never be the same after you do these courses. But then we also have the instructor training. So my way to spread impact is to train people to do what I do. And so we want to, a whole force of good out there. And so we're training these instructors. We've got almost 1,800 now already in a couple of years. So yes.
That is amazing. That is so cool. Congratulations, man. And basically the whole quest we're on is like helping people to embody new ways of being. And so we always want to finish with something tangible. So if somebody can only like take one practice away from our conversation, what is it that you would recommend for them to step into, to just embody a different version of themselves? It's maybe more calm and more connected.
The most simplest thing, and I think a lot of people overlook this, the importance of this, is nasal breathing. If you're somebody who, be mindful of how you're breathing. Are you breathing through your chest, or are you breathing through your diaphragm? So, correcting your breathing habits is the first step, because nothing else matters. You could be doing a whole bunch of techniques. If you don't have these basics, it's going to be detrimental to your whole life. So nasal breathing and diaphragmic breathing. So, correct your breathing, put your right hand on your chest, left hand on your belly. Which hand rises first when you inhale? If it's the hand on your belly, great. If it's the hand on your chest, not so good. You want to become a diaphragmic breather. So imagine your nostrils are in your belly, and imagine your abdomen expands like this. Not like just sticking out your belly like you're pregnant, but like this. So you're really expanding the abdomen like this, and then your chest. But most people are not going to need to inflate their chest at all during the day. So you just diaphragmic breathing, and always mindful of breathing through your nose. Okay, so many people, they breathe primarily through their mouth and don't even realize it. We weren't given a manual that told us how to breathe when we were kids. But breathing through your mouth means you bypass the filter of the nose, which actually cleans the air, prepares the air for absorption, produces nitric oxide. There's the only way to produce nitric oxide. When you breathe through your mouth, you get two big volumes of air coming in and out. You cause over-breathing. And you don't clean the air, so you get issues with the lungs. I bet you a lot of the people who get COVID issues are people who breathe through their mouth. In Western Hemisphere, Northern Hemisphere people tend to be mouth breathers. It's a known thing. And that's where all the problems are. And you don't want to be doing that. So switch to nasal breathing, diaphragmic breathing. Once you do that, then you can move on to more advanced stuff. Yeah.
Super nice. Thank you so much. Super actionable.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so we'll stop the live stream and just open for the Q&A.